disappointing and shameful enough that is still a campaign, that is still a subject matter of campaign. In this day and age. Electricity got into Nigeria 1896. Over 100 years ago, we are still saying that we don't have 15,000 megawatts, and it is a subject of campaign. Is an issue for campaign in this country. Did Obama campaign about availability of electricity in the US? Did Donald Trump? I tell people, I said, I don't need to vote for a candidate because he's promising me electricity. He's promising me good roads. He's promising me security. He's promising me that ASU will not go on strike. Those are mundane and very ridiculous things by now in this country. Those are ridiculous promises as far as I'm concerned. I should be dealing with ideological issues.
So we begin today's conversation taking our quote from Kemi Badenoch, a British politician who has served as Member of Parliament for Saffron Walden since 2017. A member of the Conservative Party, she served as Minister of State for Local Government, Faith and Communities, and Minister of State for Equalities from 2021 to 2022. She once said, "Growing up in Nigeria, I saw real poverty. I experienced it, including living without electricity and doing my homework by candlelight, because the state electricity board could not provide power, and fetching water in heavy, rusty buckets from a borehole a mile away, because the nationalized water company could not get water out of the taps." After how many years ago? Still the tales of so many Nigerians, even up until today. Like they say, which way Nigeria? All right, let's take our second quote, and this one is from George Gobel, an American humorist, actor, and comedian. He once said, "If it weren't for electricity, we'd all be watching television by candlelight." Very strong one. Our last quote is from Spike Milligan, a British-Irish actor, comedian, writer, musician, poet, and playwright. He once said, "And God said, 'Let there be light,' and there was light. But the electricity board said he would have to wait until Thursday to be connected." Very interesting. Let's put it in Nigerian parlance. You might have to wait till forever. Anyways, let's see how all of this could relate to what we will be discussing today. Very warm greetings and welcome to The Conversation. We are reaching you from Captain's Television Studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Annabelle Oji. Now, the 11 electricity distribution companies, as the discourse in the country, have accused the federal government of surreptitiously moving to renationalize their assets years after the facilities were privatized. In a statement by their umbrella organization, that's the Association of Nigerian Electricity Distributors, ANED, the power distributors expressed worry over the prevailing situation, which it said was being perpetuated under the guise of restructuring. Now, Captain TV gathered that the comments by the discourse came against the backdrop of a recent action by the federal government regarding the takeover of Kano, Benin, and Kaduna electricity distribution companies by Fidelity Bank PLC after the bank. Now, that's after the bank initiated an action to take over the boards of the three discos. The government had also announced through the Bureau of Public Enterprise, that's BPE, that with the takeover of Ibadan Disco by the Asset Management Corporation of Nigeria, that's AMCON, the BPE had obtained approval from the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC, to appoint an interim managing director for the power firm. The government further stated in a notice that it was restructuring the management and board of the Port Harcourt Disco to forestall an alleged imminent insolvency of the utility. The notice was jointly signed by the Director General, BPE, that's Alex Oko, and the Executive Chairman, NERC, Sanusi Garba. It also happened after a similar action And the Abuja Electricity Distribution Company, that's AEDC, which was fully endorsed by the federal government through its agencies. But the discourse in a statement noted that they were deeply concerned about the so-called restructuring of the 5 discos as announced by the BPE on July 5th, 2022 in collaboration with NERC. The power distributors said they viewed the purported restructuring as inconsistent with all the guidelines and processes necessary to comply with the framework of privatization agreements and the rule of law. Now, meanwhile, on the other news, the Association of Nigerian Electricity Distributors, ANED, in a statement this week, blamed the federal government for failing to provide the 100 billion naira fund and other promises after the 2013 privatization to ensure the distribution companies, that's the discos, improve services. Now, on that backdrop is what we will be discussing today. Now, joining us to discuss this is Oyebode Fadipe, former General Manager, Corporate Communications, Abuja Electricity Distribution Company, that's AEDC. That's after this time out. You don't want to miss this part. Join us again. If you just joined us, this is The Conversation. We are reaching you from Kaftan's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. If you just joined us, you're right on time for the interview. As our guest today on the show today is Oyebode Fadipe. He is a former general manager, corporate communications, Abuja Electricity Distribution Company, that's AEDC. And we'll be talking about power, electricity today on the show today. You're welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure having you, though.
Thank you very much.
All right, now let's talk about the recent happening, because now we noticed that just recently the federal government announced the restructuring of 5 electricity distribution companies as the discos in the country. And according to them, the affected companies are the Kano Electricity Distribution Company, Ibadan Electricity Distribution Company, and you also have Kaduna and Port Harcourt Electricity Distribution Company, and also Benin Electricity Distribution Company. So my question here is, how does the federal government restructure a distribution company, discos? Aren't they, some of them, if not all, some of them are supposed to be like privately owned?
Yes, admittedly so, but we must also appreciate the fact that government has about 40% shares. Not that alone, government did not come directly. Government hid its hand under the garment of the bank that provided the acquisition capital. So that was the way government, if you like, surreptitiously came in. And some of the discourse are saying that what government has done has no basis in law. One. Secondly, that it is a surreptitious way of renationalizing those discourse that are purported to have been taken over by government or by the banks. But if you look at it very closely, you may not be able to blame government directly, because they have also been smart enough to use the banks. And what did the banks do? The banks say that you are owing us, therefore we need to get our money back. Because in fairness to the banks, if those discos go down, for instance, in the case of Port Harcourt, government said, or government's position is that it had to step in to prevent what it described as imminent insolvency. Now, insolvency means that the acquisition capital, if the insolvency happens, the acquisition capital is gone. So how does the bank account for that huge sum of public fund, the fund of individuals that they have given out for the acquisition of that asset? How does the bank account for it? So government says it was in an attempt to prevent that imminent insolvency that they had to step in. But one of the discourse is also raising some very serious legal issues. One of them is that, look, the asset that you have gone for, does not, did not acquire the fund from you. So why are you coming after that asset? And that is Benin Electricity, for instance. BEDC is saying, look, we didn't borrow money from you directly. Video is the one that borrowed money from you directly. Video is not a shareholder in BEDC.
Help us understand who is Video here.
Now, Video is the one that borrowed money from the bank, Fidelity.
Okay.
And then Fidelity now came for the neck of BEDC. So where is the nexus between Video, BEDC, and the bank? They are saying
Video
that
a shareholder?
That's one of the reasons. That's one of the points that they have raised. That Video is not a shareholder in BEDC.
Okay.
So why are you coming for BEDC? That there is no privity of contract between BEDC, Video, and Fidelity. But government here is saying that, okay, look, admittedly they didn't borrow money, BEDC did not borrow, but what did Video use the money to do?
Interesting. So how is it BEDC's challenge?
Government is saying that Video borrowed the money to acquire BEDC.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Because there is no way you can divorce Video from BEDC, strictly speaking. So these are the legal issues. And BEDC is also saying that, look, Video, the issue of money borrowed by Video from Fidelity is already a subject matter of legal contestations. And that this issue that you are talking about is sub judice. In other words, is in court already. You cannot be dealing with an issue that is in court, for which the court has not made a specific pronouncement one way or the other. So these are the issues, going on, for which parties are in some kind of tango. And then government came in and said, look, we have repossessed, or that Fidelity Bank has repossessed. Government is saying it's a purely commercial transaction between the bank and the discourse. Their own is just to make sure that the discourse customers do not suffer. But even if we close our eyes to the acquisition capital, government is saying that on the basis of performance alone, government can still step in. And what is the performance issue that we are talking about here? At the point of acquisition, parties to this power purchase agreement or this sale agreement have what you call KPIs, key performance indicators. For the Gencos, their key performance indicator was that they will raise generation to a certain level. Gencos are saying we have been able to perform, and you can give it to them because government has not gone for their neck. That's the only that's the only path of the privatization that government has not gone for their neck in any of the generating companies. Give it to them. They have really done well. No bank has gone for them. No bank has said, as a matter of fact, I know of a particular Genco that has paid its entire acquisition capital, the money that it borrowed, about $120 million. They have paid everything. They have done so much to improve their capacity, and today they are enjoying a lot of visibility in the market. They have even acquired one disco, and I think they are in the process of acquiring another disco. So they are doing very, very well. So to that extent, you can give it to the generating companies that they have been faithful in the business. But the question is, why is it that it is discourse alone that are having this issue?
The challenge?
Yes. Now, in terms of the key performance indicators, for the discourse, we have the crashing or the reduction. Let me not even go to the extent of crashing. Let me say the reduction, substantial reduction of the ATC and C losses, aggregate technical, commercial, and collection losses. That's one of the fundamental KPI that they signed for. The second one is the availability, the provision of meters. Now, the question you want to ask yourself is, in which of these KPIs have they been able to, optimize their performance? Today, the issue of meter is still a major issue for conversation in the market. If you take about 10 customers, about 8 of them, or at least 6 of them, will still say that they don't have meters, which is about 60%.
And then the remaining will tell you that they bought the meters, even though the federal government said it's free.
They have one complaint or the other to raise. So, to the extent of performance, you can also say that even if government is not coming from the perspective of the acquisition capital, from the perspective of performance, for instance, BPE said Benin and Ibadan are one of the worst performing discos. I mean, that's a very strong statement to make. So the question is, what are the parameters you used? Is it just the metering and the ATC and C losses alone? That's one. The second one is, how come it is only after 9 years that you are realizing that they are one of the worst performing discos? Where have you been? In any case, you have been on their board, because BPE is on the board of the discos. You are privy to policy conversations. You are privy to policy decisions. You have, I mean, NERC is supposed to have done what is called open book, which is a quasi-audit exercise. Why is it that it's only after 9 years that you are realizing that they are one of the worst performing discos? What have you been doing? You have been on, permit this expression, you have been on bed with them all along. Oh,
wow. Okay, so now for the benefit of our viewers who don't know, understand what BPE is, that's Bureau of
Public Enterprises.
Okay, now, so now I just had to laugh at that last statement that you actually made. All right, so now for the benefit of those who don't understand, the Gencos, are they privately owned, or they also have a government stake, has a share in them?
Now, the methodology of privatization of the Gencos is concessionaire over a long period of time, I think 30 years or something like that.
Okay. Now,
meaning that government said, okay, go and run it. We have considered to you to go and run it under certain conditions. And they too have their own challenge with government. And I think one of the major challenges that they have, and I'm happy that you are somebody who has followed the conversation in that regard, is the indebtedness to the Gencos, particularly in the area of capacity, capacity provision. Now, Gencos are saying that, okay, look, at the beginning of this conversation, 2013 or thereabout, the agreement was that we'll ramp up availability because you are ready to take. Transmission says we are ready to take. Distribution said we are ready to take. So Gencos went all out, acquired capital, ramped up their capacity, and then all of a sudden, transmission and distributions are saying we cannot. This is what we can take. What happens to the balance? Let's look at it. Let's use the analogy of a transporter.
Okay.
You wanted to transport 15 people. And you said I should get a bus that can carry 15 people. I went all out, got the loan, bought the bus, serviced the bus, provided fuel, provided extra tire, got my driver, got my conductor, did everything that was supposed to be done, got my roadworthiness, got my vehicle license, got the driver's license, did everything. And then you said, no, I have just 3 people that I want you to take to the next location. What happens to the balance? You said they are not paying for the balance, that they are empty seats. Excuse me? I have made commitment on the base. So we're dealing with the issue of sanctity of contract, respect for agreements. So there are instances where you now find that generation is not giving as much as they can because of the disrespect of for agreements. Because there's no longer sanctity of contract. So that's the huge challenge that they have there. They are no longer going all out to make sure that the capacity is available. That's part of the huge challenge that they are.
So that means the transmission and the distribution, they're the ones hampering the effort of the Gencos.
I won't put it straightforwardly like that, because that would also come to this blame game that I didn't quite enjoy when I was in AEDC. I think largely the policy instruments have been responsible, and I'll put it straightforwardly at the doorstep of government agencies, NERC especially, because that's the regulator. If you have signed an agreement with the Gencos, for instance, I think it's only fit and proper that you do everything to make sure that the agreement is respected. If transmission does not have the capacity, what are you supposed to do? It's your property, it's your baby. You bring it up to the point where it can carry the system. Ordinarily and conventionally, transmission should be able to take 2 times the capacity of generation. So if generation is able to do 30,000 megawatts, transmission should be able to do 60,000 megawatts.
Oh.
And then distribution should be able to take, if not 100% of the 60,000 megawatts, it should be able to do 50%, in other words, plus 50% of whatever transmission is able to do. So if transmission is able to do 60,000 megawatts, if the distribution cannot do 120,000 megawatts, then it should be able to do 90,000 megawatts.
Oh, wow.
That's the conventional wisdom.
In all of this, where does the issue of every time the national grid have collapsed, where does all of this, where does it come in?
Now, the issue of collapse of national grid, again, is a function of, particularly at the transmission and distribution end. Now, why is it like that? The transmission is actually the manager of the grid, and that's why you have residents in transmission today is what you call the independent system operator. That is the one that manages the load, gives load to the south, gives load to the north, gives load to the east, through the facilities of the transmission service provider. So there are 2 principal arms of the transmission company of Nigeria. You have the independent system operator, operating majorly from the National Control Center, which is in Osogbo.
Okay. And
then you have the transmission service provider, which is the manager of the physical facilities that you are seeing all over the place. Those transmission towers, the conductors that are running, that are crisscrossing the entire country. When for instance, when a transmission tower was vandalized in Odukpani in Cross River State, it was the lot of the transmission service provider to go and see what happened there and see how that tower can be restored. When a conductor is vandalized, it is the responsibility of the transmission service provider, because they own the physical and tangible assets that you can see and behold. But the independent system operator, you feel their presence, you can't hold their product. If you touch their product, it is goodbye to the world. You cannot touch their product. But they also have systems, they also have physical facilities with which they manage. So they view, you recall that the last system collapse, they started by saying that the frequency dropped. And as a result of the drop in the frequency, because of the loss of about 165 megawatts, it also led inexorably to about 425 megawatts, and that threw the entire country into darkness.
Was it 400 at some point? I think we even had 9 megawatts, and there's
it dropped 0. Yes. That was as a result of several consequential experiences along the system, along the line of the system. So all of those ones are very technical issues, but the summary of it is that the responsibility to sustain and stabilize it at 50 Hz, which is our frequency level, is the responsibility of the independent system operator, as distinct from the transmission service provider.
Oh wow.
Complicated system. Very
complicated system. And then yet they keep throwing blames at each other.
Yes. If we had a functional system, you won't see these people. You won't hear them. You will only feel them.
So what is it that every Nigerian goes straight to the discourse? They don't talk about the NERC. They don't talk about the GENCOs or the transmission companies.
At the level of policy, it is NERC. They don't know, the customer really does not need all of this education. It's because there is inefficiency. It's because there is inadequacy. It's because we have not been able to manage our system in such a way that there is efficiency. That's why you begin to, when a woman, permit the use of this analogy, when a woman is pregnant, she walks into the labor room and comes out with a baby. You are not really bothered about the anesthesiologist. You are not bothered about the nurse. You are not bothered about the midwife. You are not bothered about the doctor.
Sometimes you're not even bothered about how she gave birth. You are not CS or natural
exactly birth. But when anything goes wrong, that's when you start asking, who performed what? Who did what? Where was the midwife? Where was the O&G doctor? Where? What happened? Was it CS or through VBAC? Who did what? That's when you start querying everybody. Because people have not performed their function, including even up to the time, I mean, the person dealing with the blood bank, the person registering the patient, and all of those ones you start asking questions. The same thing with the power sector. Is because there has been inefficiency. It's because there has been inadequacy of service. That's why more customers have become so educated that they can tell you what is a fuse, what is a JMP, what is an insulator, the size of the cable, where the power station is located, where the injection substation is located, and all of the entire configuration of electricity supply. It's because there has been inefficiency. If there is no inefficiency, you won't know. You don't have time for all of those ones.
So are we supposed to keep holding the discos at ransom, or the transmission companies?
All of them are contributing. From my own perspective, it's only the degree of contribution that differs. Otherwise, all of them have their own challenges. Take for instance, if you want to go to generation, whatever megawatts we have now is grossly inadequate for a country of 200 million people. For God's sake, we don't have 20,000 megawatts installed capacity. We don't. It has always been between 12 and 15. We don't have 20,000 megawatts.
Do we even have 12 and 15? Have we ever gotten 12 and 15?
Let's see. For the purpose of this discussion, let's be that generous and say, okay, we have up to 15,000 megawatts.
Okay.
Let's even be that generous. Say we have up to 15,000 megawatts from the grid. Available in the grid, because there is also off-grid solution, which is solar and all of those other opportunities that we have in the technology of electricity supply. So hydro and thermal, are they up to 15,000 megawatts today? If they are up to that, Tinubu will not be, I hope I'm not campaigning for somebody, but two of the presidential candidates will not be telling you that I will do 15,000 megawatts.
Because they know that it is there.
Because it's not available. That's why they are not using it as a campaign material.
And it cannot work.
Not that it cannot work, but it's even disappointing and shameful enough that is still a campaign, that is still a subject matter of campaign. In this day and age. Electricity got into Nigeria 1896. Over 100 years ago, we are still saying that we don't have 15,000 megawatts, and it is a subject of campaign. Is an issue for campaign in this country. Did Obama campaign about availability of electricity in the US? Did Donald Trump? I tell people, I said, I don't need to vote for a candidate because he's promising me electricity. He's promising me good roads. He's promising me security. He's promising me that ASU will not go on strike. Those are mundane and very ridiculous things by now in this country. Those are ridiculous promises as far as I'm concerned. I should be dealing with ideological issues. What will make Nigeria rule Africa and beyond the continental power?
And still stand as the giant of Africa.
Yes, those are the things I should be dealing with. I should be dealing with cross-border issues, not dealing with mundane issues. There are no good roads. There is no security. A federal capital territory is threatened. Those are mundane issues.
It is really sad. Now let's still go back to the issue of the restructuring by the federal government. Now we saw that according to the discourse, according to the Association of Nigerian Electricity Distributors, that's ANID, they said that the power distributors expressed worry over the prevailing situation, which it said that was being perpetrated under the guise of restructuring, like you actually said. And they accused the federal government of secretly moving to renationalize their assets, like you also stated, years after the facilities that have been privatized. So we're trying to get exactly why that accusation? Why do they think that the government is secretly trying to, in the name of restructure, trying to renationalize? Now,
it's very clear for even for the blind. Government is worried about the fact that almost 10 years after privatization, it is still providing funds for the discourse. Not just providing funds, the efficiency level is still questionable.
But you just said some of them took loans from Fidelity Bank.
Yes, they did. Not Fidelity Bank alone. I know that AEDC, for instance, got its acquisition capital from UBA. That's why UBA moved in. Okay? AEDC is currently in the hands of UBA. Now, the point here is, how many parents will be comfortable with breastfeeding a 10-year-old baby or a 9-year-old baby? How many parents will be comfortable seeing a 9-year-old baby crawling? Of course, it's most probably going to be that that child has polio. Now, government is saying, if all of my expectations at the point of privatization have not been met, what is the most pragmatic thing for me to do in this circumstance? We cannot, I mean, let's remove the veil from and see what exactly is behind. What is behind is the worry of government. Not just government, but the worry of even the public. The public is quite worried. If everything were normal, government will not go to Germany to sign a contract agreement with Siemens. I got a video about, of the Minister of Power giving his report back to Mr. President some few days ago, and he was saying that some transformers will begin to arrive the country from September, October, November, December, and then maybe the last one will come in January. These are not things that government should be dealing with again. Government should concentrate more on transmission by now. But government is still signing contract on behalf of the discourse. And that's worrisome. So it means that government, putting it bluntly, does not have confidence in the ability of the discourse to deliver on their mandate.
So they still have a grip on them.
Yes. And it's so obvious. That's why CBN is still providing funds for them to get meters in the form of loan. Otherwise, by now, they expect that they should have been able to make so much money that they can invest in all of these things. But ANED, which is the umbrella body for the distribution companies, is saying that, look, along the line, you have breached several agreements. One is that the tariff that you have allowed the discourse to charge is under recovery. Provides room for under recovery, that they are not able to recover their production costs, let alone to be able to break even and then have enough capital for reinvestment in
all of this tariff they keep putting.
That's what they are saying.
Okay. We would allow you to unbundle that part of
the second point they made.
We need to go on the break. We need to go on the break. Let's go on this quick break, and when we return, we will definitely expand this conversation. You don't want to miss this part. See you shortly.
Smart accountants can prepare the books to show that your cash flow is such that it will be able to sustain the business.
Really? That's why you think accountants these days are the problem of Nigeria?
Well,
some accountants.
I don't know. But I'm told that people can do some financial engineering.
And they'll beat it.
They can demonstrate some financial wizardry that will let you see a smooth cash flow, because cash flow is very, very important, and anybody can be taken in by that information. Why? In the power sector, they receive money, please mark my words, they receive money almost per second, because people are paying at all times. But the question is the money they receive sufficient to sustain the business? That's a different conversation entirely.
If if you just joined us, this is The Conversation. We are reaching you from Kaftan's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. If you just joined us, you missed quite a lot, but then you can still join in the conversation. Our guest on the show today is Oyebode Fadipe. He is the former General Manager, Corporate Communications at AEDC. All right, and before we went on that break, you actually wanted to touch, you were touching some nerve. I'm sure some Nigerians want to listen to that part, especially business people. Why they keep increasing tariff every time, but now you are saying that somehow it is still a short change to the discourse.
Yes,
what you meant?
The Association of Nigerian Electricity Distributors have come up with this argument that at the point of privatization, a fundamental agreement was that there will be periodic review. And that's where you talk about the multi-year tariff order. The multi-year tariff order allows the discourse, allows the review of tariff consistently over a period of time until you get to the pyramid or the zenith, and then it begins to come back to the valley. Okay, there you get to the water, you have a waterfall situation, so it begins to fall down again. That's when tariff is supposed to begin to experience some reduction. Now, for the ANED, they think that because you have not been consistent with that review, meaning that whatever they have done now is even supposed to be more than that. Because you have
really?
not been, yeah, that's the argument. So because you have not been consistent with the review, they have also under-recovered. And because they have under-recovered, they have not been able to meet their own expectations. That's one. The second one is that government, they allege that government promised 100 billion naira subsidy, and that government has not fulfilled that part of it. Number three, which they also raised in their own argument, is that MDA debts, which was supposed to be recovered from source, for instance, through, MDA ministries, departments, and agencies, which they were supposed to recover from source, they have not recovered. So again, the discourse have been denied that fund. And then number four is the macroeconomic indicators. For instance, the forex. At the point of acquisition, forex was below 200 naira to a dollar. But as it is today, we all know what the current market rate is, whether for the parallel market or for the official market. We all know that it is no longer the same value that it was at the
9 years ago.
And they are saying that 3/4, if not 90% of what we use in the discourse are brought in from abroad. If they are brought in from abroad, it means that there is greater pressure on the fund that is available to them for investment due to forex. Because if I bought dollar at 100 naira yesterday, and by today I'm buying it at 150, the naira available to me has reduced. So all of those factors they have put together to say, look, so while ANED is not saying that we are angels, that the discourse are angels, they admit that there are areas of improvement for the discourse. They admit that there are areas of inefficiency, there are areas of leakages for the discourse. But they are saying that government, you also have encouraged. So in law, we call it contributory negligence. Okay. If you are driving, for instance, and you park your car somewhere, maybe as a result of one fault or the other, and you don't put a C caution to warn oncoming vehicles. If anything happens to your vehicle, the law says that you have contributed to the negligence of the other man. So ANED is saying that in our own way of looking at it, what has led to our own challenges is as a result of your own inadequacies as well. And one of the things they have also accused government of is frequent policy somersault, which is right at the doorstep of NERC. Because NERC is the principal policy provider and implementer. So they are saying, look, government, NERC is the representative of government. NERC, BPE, through Office of the Vice President, and Ministry of Power. They are saying all of these government agencies, they have in their own way.
They have their hand in the teeth.
Exactly.
All right. Now, since you talked about how much ANED has complained, because they said that the federal government failed to meet the agreed conditions, which they owe them about 100 billion naira in subsidy debt, and then they says that BPE provided inaccurate information during the privatization process.
Yes.
I recall having this conversation with you few years or months back, where I asked you, and then you were still the GM communications department at AEDC, where I asked you if the discourse did a comprehensive due process before jumping in at the offer of for this privatization process, or they just found the federal government's promises too juicy enough to ignore, that they had to accept all of them without looking at it anti-clockwise, and then they accepted all hook, line, and sinker, and then which at least to prevent some of this complaint that they are given now. And you said, and quote, Annabelle, I remember you saying that no company go through a privatization. Let me read it from here. You said no company goes through a privatization process without due process. Annabelle, that's not possible. So why exactly are we here 9 years after, still making these complaints?
Now, it will sound very, very interesting that kind of complaint of we didn't see everything before we bought. I will expect that even if they didn't see anything, they would have been on the path of caution, because I'm sure government sold as it is. And when you buy as it is, what the seller is telling you is that you can't, anything you find there, you take it. So for me, that argument itself is, we need to be very, very careful about it. Now, coming back to the response I gave at that time, when it comes to due process, you may not really fault government. You do the advert, it's a public thing. Those who felt like bidding, they bidded. As a matter of fact, the information in the public space, this is not my information, so I cannot be held for it. But I have sat in the same interview with some very senior public officers who were involved in the process. And the fact that came into the public space is that the first set of people that wanted to buy told government that you need to tread with caution. But government seemed to have been very desperate to sell.
And then you have people who are desperate to buy.
And so they went for what you might call the third 11, using the using football team analysis. The first 11 said, look, fine, you want to privatize, but this privatization that you want to do, you may burn your fingers. And possibly the second 11 also gave the same advice. And then, because government was desperate to sell, government lowered the standard so that those who eventually bought could buy. Look, two fundamental parameters were used. One, the financial bid. Two, the technical bid. In the financial bid, what government was looking for was, how do you manage your cash flow in such a way that you will have reinvestable funds? Any smart accountant can prepare the books to show that your cash flow is such that it will be able to sustain the business.
Really? That's why you think accountants these days are the problem of Nigeria?
Well,
some accountants.
I don't know. But I'm told that people can do some financial engineering.
Panel beating.
They can demonstrate some financial wizardry that will let you see a smooth cash flow, because cash flow is very, very important. And anybody can be taken in by that information. Why? In the power sector, they receive money. Please mark my words. They receive money almost per second, because people are paying at all times. But the question is the money they receive sufficient to sustain the business? That's a different conversation entirely. So by the time you're able to show that, okay, this money will be coming like this, they can be paying the banks and things like that, then anybody will be taken in. Number two is the technical bid. What you just need to show is to say that, okay, look, these people have worked in these areas before. They have the competency to run. But guess what? No sooner they were able to scale those hurdles than you started finding corporate governance issues. Some of the discourse were said, the management of some of the discourse were said to have lived an ostentatious life. Just imagine what an ostentatious life will be like. And all of them were placed, that ostentatious life was placed on the revenue that was coming in. At a point in time.
Do you want to put a name or a face to it?
What kind of face can I put to it other than to say ostentatious life? Whatever ostentatious, in economics, we know that ostentatious living, if I remember my economics very well, is one of the exceptions to the issue of demand and supply of things like that. But let me not.
No, I meant, do you want to put a face or a name to some of these discourse?
No, I don't want to go to that extent.
Okay.
I don't want to go to that extent. So nobody comes around to say he's talking out of bad belly. I don't want to go to that extent. But any one of them could have been involved in that kind of thing. So as a result of that, and these are verifiable facts, as a result of that, it was difficult, if not impossible, for them to meet their market obligations.
Okay.
It was impossible, it was difficult, if not impossible, to meet their. So what they were remitting to the market was grossly inadequate. And because of that, they were accused of some level of delinquency. Is it market delinquency or something like that? Because they were not paying enough. Gencos could not get their own money. Transmission could not get their own money. That was why CBN now came and escrowed their account. Because currently the account is escrowed. What does that mean? Nobody touches any collection until CBN has deducted all money meant for every other member of the market. What is going to generation goes to them. What is going to transmission goes to them. The loans that CBN has provided the discourse, they deduct the percentage they are supposed to deduct, whatever it is, then they pay the discourse what their own percentage. If what their own percentage is enough to meet their staff salary and other overheads, good for them. Otherwise, then they not. So these are the issues that are rocking. You see that at the point of financial bid and technical bid, they have scaled through. But in the real life situation, what do you have? You have corporate governance issue, which is one of the reasons that led to the takeover of one of the discos. Corporate governance was a major issue. And then you have, again, like I said initially, ostentatious living and all of those stuff. And several other factors that, have also led. Of course, you cannot blame the discourse alone. And that's why Aned is saying that even government itself, in terms of policy somersault, in terms of lack of respect for agreement, sanctity of contract, and all of those things, they are also they cannot exonerate themselves.
All right. So the statement, according to the federal government, said that qualified private sector investors will buy the bulk of the equity in the companies and then recapitalize them and run them profitably. So what exactly is the parameter or what you used to measure where they called I'm trying to look, what was that word again? Qualified private sector. How do you measure or how do you know who a qualified private sector is?
Well, I think one of the ways by which you can measure who a qualified private sector equity provider will be their track record. Have they managed a utility of similar size? I mean, take for instance, at the point of privatization, one of the conditions was that the local investor must have a foreign investor. And then some of these foreign investors, they have not even managed a state as big as with as much as the customers in Lagos State for their entire country. And such person, such such quote unquote foreign investor was brought in, when what they have managed is not more than Wuse or Katampe or Dawaki, but you brought them to come and manage a place as big, with all of the complexities in Nigeria, as big as 4 states, except Lagos, except Eko and Ikeja.
That's why they have 2 different discos in Lagos.
All other discos have geographical coverage of at least 3 states.
Okay. And
maybe maximum of 4 states. I know that Abuja has Kogi, Nasarawa, Niger, and FCT itself. I know that BEDC has Edo, Delta, Ondo, and Ekiti. 4. I know that who is there again? Ibadan has Oyo, Kwara, Ogun, and Osun. 4. And then not to talk of the likes of Kaduna, not to talk of the likes of Kano, not to talk of the likes of Jos, not to talk of the likes of Port Harcourt that controls Port Harcourt, Bayelsa, who is there again, and maybe 2 other states, and then Enugu. In fact, Enugu is controlling the entire southeast as a geopolitical zone. There is no other disco in the entire southeast. It's only Enugu disco that is running the whole of that place. And one of the arguments of stakeholders and concerned Nigerians is that some of these discos are too large. One of the things you can do to bring about efficiency in that argument is that bifurcate, break them down into smaller units, smaller, more manageable units. But my argument has always been that if you say you break them down to smaller, manageable units, it is not in the size, but the efficiency of the managerial competence that you are bringing to the table. That's a fundamental issue.
Now, because you mentioned Ibadan Electricity Distribution Company, now we saw that the IBEDC said that they were unlawfully included in that announcement made by the federal government, adding that the government's publication was ill-conceived. Why exactly did they make such claim?
Maybe because AMCON was already taking over IBEDC, or AMCON had already taken over IBEDC. I know that even before then, IBEDC had been going through some quite a number of challenges in time with AMCON. Even at a point in time, they had a running battle with NERC, because according to NERC, they got money to do A, but they used the money for B, and IBEDC had to go to court, and the court said NERC, the action of NERC was ultra-vires their ostensible and apparent authority. And because of that, when the bill, the electricity bill that is currently going on, when it came up for public hearing, NERC came forward to say we need more powers to be able to manage the power sector as it is, because and I'm sure it was as a result of that experience of IBEDC going to court to say what you did, because they suspended their board. They suspended the board of IBEDC, and they said what you did was ultra-vires your ostensible and apparent powers, and the court ruled in favor of IBEDC. So that was like NERC burning its finger in that area, and I'm sure they didn't feel quite comfortable with it. So in terms of IBEDC saying that NERC has overstepped its bounds again. It probably will be on the basis of the fact that, look, we are already in the hands of AMCON. We are negotiating with AMCON. Why would you list us along with those other discourse that you have acquired, in quotes, reacquired again? But again, IBEDC must not lose sight of the fact that even if government is not coming by way of the acquisition capital and all of those contractual relationships, commercial transactions, government can still come by way of performance. And you will recall that one of the discos that was said to be having terrible performance is IBEDC. That's one of the discos that was mentioned. So, but at the end of the day, the question for me is, how does it affect the customer?
Now that's what we're going to ask now, because now the statement further indicated that the discos have continued to sell electricity below the cost price. So, and that have Nigerians, in my mind, that's what I was trying to come up with a thing. Have Nigerians ever, at any point in time, bought electricity below cost price, or have electricity ever been affordable in Nigeria? Because you have people, businesses, they pay for so much. They tell you that they pay so much for electricity, yet they don't get anything that is commensurate with what they pay. So how does all of this affect that man, that businessman who is using the electricity, paying so much, but yet he gets so little?
Now, it will depend on what you mean by paying so much. Electricity pricing, or the pricing of electricity, or the economics of electricity, is one very topical area in utility management globally. I mean, because there are so many parameters to be taken into consideration. I mean, on top of my head, you can begin to talk about cost of gas. You can begin to talk about the cost of generation itself, because it's gas to GenCos, from GenCos to transmission, from transmissions to disco, and then to the customer, and the naira flows back again. If for the gas man to give you gas, he will look at all the things he needs to do, and then he will get an average cost and say, okay, it is at this price that I will sell. Let's even close our eyes to the fact that they may have incentive to sell at the international market, which makes them make more money than the local market. Let's even close our eyes to that fact. The fact that they will put all of their production cost on the selling price will be a pass-on cost to generation. Generation will also add all of its own. Transmission, I mean, so, and then you want to see.
So that means the customers are the ones bearing the brunt.
So ultimately, and then you want to find out, what does it cost to produce a megawatt of electricity through thermal? What does it cost to produce a megawatt of electricity through hydro? In other words, through gas and through water. What does it cost? Usually water is cheaper and perhaps more reliable. So, and because we get our power from those two sources, not to talk of if we are firing coal, I mean, if we have a coal-fired plant and all of those things. By the time we aggregate all of these ones, at what cost are we going to be selling? So, what I'm trying to say in effect is that it may not be a straightforward thing to say this is the cost of electricity at production points. Therefore, it will also be difficult to say whether the customer has been overpaying. But let's look at it from this perspective. If you are using I Better Pass My Neighbor, how much will it cost you today to fill the tank of I Better Pass My Neighbor? Admittedly, you can run I Better Pass My Neighbor from around 6 p.m. to about 5 a.m. or 6 p.m. of the following day. But what about the other cost of maintenance that you do? What about the cost of the possibility of a fire outbreak because the facility is close to your house? What about the cost of the noise that comes to you? What about the possibility of, once that thing breaks down, you don't have an alternative source, and so many other things that are attached. So at the end of the day, when you add all of those costs together, what you are likely to get is to find out that the public power supply is still a lot cheaper.
Really? Okay. So yeah, they're already calling on us to end round up. Now, because you talked about that, now let's actually end on that note. Let's get your closing remark there. So now, are we ever going to get to that point where 80 or 90% of Nigerians will no longer depend on power, PHCN, or electricity distributors to get their electricity supply? Because you talked about the hydro and then the thermal. Are we ever going to get to that point where we now use completely across board, where we now use the safer, the cleaner, renewable energy, and then we don't have to either suffer because now you have
system
collapse and all, because now you have when they will tell you that are we ever going to stop using electricity? Then the people that are supplying generators or importing generators, they have their business there, so they're already affected. So will we ever get to that point where completely across board Nigerians will enjoy renewable energy and then forget about this PHCN?
It will be unwise to kill one for the other. It will be unwise. What we need to do is to be pragmatic. Why do I say it will be unwise? There is a level of usage that your alternative solutions can carry you. It cannot carry you beyond certain level. For instance, lighting points, some bit of production effort here and there. You can use solar, you can use alternative solutions and things like that. But when it comes to heavy production activities, you still need the grid. Countries that have advanced have had an admixture of several different sources: nuclear, thermal, hydro, solar, what other solutions? Wind, and it's a cocktail of different technologies, depending on which one is more profitable for a particular geography.
So in conclusion, Nigeria will never get to that extent.
No, we can get there if we are committed to it. What I'm saying is that let's not kill one for the other, as we killed Nitel for, if Nitel had been allowed to run pari passu with others, I mean, I'm sure Nitel will still be performing today. So don't kill the grid solution for the off-grid solution. Don't kill off-grid solution for the grid solution. That's the point I'm trying to make.
So are you among those people who would say that because we are generator importers, please, because of our business, don't kill our business?
The moment we become efficient in grid and off-grid, generators will go.
Okay.
Generators will go. It's because we have not been efficient in those two areas, especially. That's why generator importers are still having a field day, and you can't blame them because it has become an alternative solution as well.
Thank you so much for your time with us, Oyebode Fadipe. It's always a pleasure having this discussion with you.
Thank you very much.
All right, viewers, I'm sure you must have been rightly entertained, educated, and informed. We have been schooled, I'm sure, by Oyebode Fadipe. He is the former General Manager, Corporate Communications at Abuja Electricity Distribution Company, that's AEDC. And it's been a wonderful time here on The Conversation. I will see you next time. Keep watching The Conversation, because you never know who my next guest will be and what my next topic will be all about. I'll see you again. From the nation's capital, Abuja, I am Annabelle Oji. God bless Nigeria.